Welcome! In this video, we will take a closer look into the character the Stranger in the Rings of Power. We will examine several scenes from the TV series as well as scenes from the Lord of the Rings movies and the text from the books. At the end, we will provide convincing evidence related to his appearance, his expressions, his actions, and statements from other characters, which will conclude that the Stranger has to be Gandalf. Moreover, we shall list some open questions that will be answered in the next seasons. So, who is this character called the Stranger? Let's begin by his appearance. At the end of the first episode of Season 1, we see a meteorite coming from west traveling to the east, as witnessed by Gil-galad, Elrond, Celebrimbor, Bronwyn, Arondir, and Nori. The first time we see the Stranger was when he was unconscious, lying at a bed of flames at the center of the crater. From the first scene, he shows some supernatural elements even for a character in the Tolkien universe. No elves, men, hobbits, or dwarves would endure such an impact. This shot obviously resembles a certain eye, and being in the second episode, it must have been a red herring to imply that he could be Sauron, which we know eventually was not true. The other time we saw such an eye shot was during the forging of the 3 elven rings. As a side note, we think that this signifies Sauron's involvement, where we have made a dedicated video which details how Sauron contaminated the rings remotely. Next, Nori and Poppy went to the crash site and inspected the Stranger. Soon enough, the Stranger woke up and in a state of shock, he displayed a feat where he manipulated his surroundings. The Stranger seemed to affect the air near him and, more importantly, had a command over the fire where we saw the light dim while he was focused. A similar scene occurred later as well. Have we ever seen such a scene with a certain character? Indeed we did in the Fellowship of the Ring movie.
You want it for yourself!
Bilbo Baggins! Do not take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks. I am not trying to rob you. Trying to help you.
Did you notice the way Bilbo's hair and coat move? And the way the lights dim? Interesting indeed. One nice piece of related text is found in the first book of the Lord of the Rings, where it says, Gandalf's eyes flashed. It will be my turn to get angry soon, he said. If you say that again, I shall. Then you will see Gandalf the Grey uncloaked. He took a step towards the Hobbit, and he seemed to grow tall and menacing. His shadow filled the little room and the air tingled. Certainly, a very close depiction between the Rings of Power and the Lord of the Rings books and movies. Next, we take a look at the Stranger's expressions. Majority of the viewers have catched the suggestions to Nori related to smelling.
There's a sweet smell on the air this way. When in doubt, Eleanor Brandyfoot. Always follow your nose.
Let's also remember what Gandalf said in the Mines of Moria.
It's that way.
He's remembered.
No, but the air doesn't smell so foul down here. If in doubt, always follow your nose.
This is obviously no coincidence, and there is not much to say. Although not verbatim, the two sayings are the same. One other similar phrasing that might have escaped the casual viewer is related to the definition of adventures.
So it's a bit like an adventure.
Alone, it's just a journey. No adventures. They must be shared.
And now let's recall a scene from the Hobbit movies, when Gandalf was trying to convince Bilbo to join Thorin and his company.
That remains to be seen. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
Again, a very similar wording. The last similarity is between Nori's and Gandalf's description of hobbits, which feels intentional from the writer's point of view.
I know I'm just one little Harfoot in a grand, wide world.
And I'm very fond of you. But you're only quite a little fellow. In a wide world, after all.
Now, let's look at the way the Stranger interacts with his surroundings. We briefly touched upon his command over air and fire, but we have more instances where he showed his skills. While trying to defend the Harfoots, he used air to push the creatures away, injuring his arm during the process. He heals his arm while muttering Envinyatar, a word meaning renew, which he repeats while healing the burnt tree as well. This is a rather uncharacteristic portrayal of Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings movies and books. He is known to be a healer of spirit and mind, not really a physical one. There are certain instances where Gandalf had to intervene, like with the case of Theoden. And there are cases when he chose not to, with the case of Faramir and Eowyn in The Lord of the Rings, perhaps in the favor of Aragorn. However, this could be justified by the fact that the stranger has no experience of possessing a mortal body before, so he had to act to heal his arm, which was giving him pain. Although not as high level as Radagast, we remember Gandalf's close relationship with animals, most importantly moths. Gandalf whispers to them, and they carry messages between him and the eagles quite a few times. And in the Rings of Power, the stranger showed a similar connection to fireflies. It is also interesting that the mystics, which we are going to talk more about in a few minutes, were disintegrated by the stranger's spell, in a pattern similar to moths. Another one is his connection to carts. He spent quite a bit of time near and in the cart the Harfoots own, so perhaps it makes sense that he uses one as a mode of transportation later. Now we come to a topic that deserves its own inspection, and it is the constellation the stranger is looking for. As soon as he came to his senses, he drew it on sand, on tree bark, asking for information from Nori. Nori stole a parchment from Sadok's book, which later Sadok confirmed his existence.
Well, all I can tell you is Harfoot folk haven't seen him since the days our ancestors lived in parts unknown over 1,000 years ago.
However, the stranger learned the most from the mystics. So who are these mystics? They are the three characters that were tracking down the stranger. It was also interesting to see that one of them held a metal plate, which had the same constellation sign engraved on it. Initially, their intentions were unknown, but in the last episode of Season 1, they shared a critical information with the stranger, mistaking him with Sauron. Let's check what they said one by one.
The more your powers awaken, the more the veil will weaken.
Veil?
The one placed upon your mind.
This is quite interesting. So it seems the mystics think that someone put a veil upon Sauron's mind. Who is this someone? Are they the Valar punishing Sauron for his deeds? Is there a possibility that they're referring to Adar? Although we don't have the full picture, we know that Adar had a role in stopping Sauron, splitting him open, which made Sauron possess the body of Halbrand. This is quite unlikely. The mystics might be referring to a tale after the events of the First Age, but not really know about the details of Sauron's presence in Forodwaith, and his experiments involving Uruks and Adar.
By those who cast you down. But we have come here to welcome you in, to bring you to our lands.
Your lands?
You know them already.
The stars.
It is called the Hermit's Hat. A pattern visible in but one place. Far to the east, where the stars are strange. The lands of Hrun.
So it is obvious that the constellation the stranger is looking for and the Hermit's Hat the mystics mentioned are the same. First of all, how did the mystics know the coming of the stranger? Perhaps they saw the meteorite as well, but it seems that they were expecting it. Perhaps there was a prophecy in their culture?
You fell from the stars, yet you are greater than they. For fire obeys your will. You fell below the dust, yet dust fears you. For it trembles when you are wroth. The winds and waters, the heat and cold. In Rhûn you shall learn to command them all. And every being that walks crawls shall be your slave. For you, our Lord Sauron.
The mystics said that he fell from the stars and he commands the nature. These descriptions certainly fit the stranger. The falling from the stars could be a part of this prophecy as well. But perhaps the most burning question is why the stranger is compelled to find the hermit set. In the books, Gandalf and the other wizards were sent by Valar as a counteraction to Sauron's rising in Middle-earth. But as far as we know from the books, Gandalf never visited the east. He mainly stayed in the west. The most satisfying answer we could come up with right now is that the Valar thought the best place to look for Sauron was the lands of Rhûn, where a cult of Morgoth was known to exist. Could it be that the Valar played a trick on this cult by sending the stranger in a way that is via meteorite, so that the mystics would mistake him for Sauron and take him to their home? We could even speculate that the meteorite was essentially a projectile from Valinor, which was timed when the elven ship was about to enter Valinor, and at that instance the stranger was sent out. But even this explanation has a counter-argument, as the mystics in the end recognize that he is not Sauron.
He is not Sauron.
He is the other, the Star.
It seems whatever piece of speculation the mystics are using, it also had a warning that this person could be a wizard, not Sauron. In the end, it's a risky business, and if not for Nori, the stranger might have been corrupted by the mystics early on. Eventually, we shall get a satisfying answer. The final point has a rather philosophical dimension. We saw the stranger questioning himself, rather like an existentialist, who he is he good or evil, etc. Just before the face-off against the mystics, thanks to a nudge by Nori, he tells them that he is good and he casts them away. This is also interesting, as after he chose to be good and save the Harfoots, he says that he remembers more and he is certain that he has to go to Rhûn.
Do you remember anything more yet?
Fragments, impressions. More has come, but to discover the rest, I know I must go to Rhûn. Istar. In your tongue, that means wise one. Or wizard. Betimes our paths are laid before us by powers greater than our own. In those moments, it's our task to make our feet go where our hearts wish not to tread, no matter the perils awaiting us on the way.
This reminds us one of the most well-known scenes from the Lord of the Rings movies, between Gandalf and Frodo.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
Without any presumption, this sentence does not really tell Frodo, or anyone else for that matter, to be good or evil. It is a statement of choice. It is a bit subjective, but one can argue that the highest form of goodness is one that is chosen, that follows a conviction. If indeed Gandalf's origin is built upon him choosing to be good, it is more impressive and compelling in contrast to being sent as a programmed commander to help save Middle-earth. This also opens the way to blue wizards and even Saruman making their own choices, having decided what to do with the time that is given to them. One small thing that attracted the attention of our team is the fireworks we see over Lindon. Don't you think this resembles the impressive fireworks Gandalf uses to entertain the hobbits? Given the tabula rasa state of the stranger, perhaps he will learn the technique during a visit to Lindon. Who knows? And now we come to our conclusion. Having all the information in hand, the stranger's appearance, mannerisms, and capabilities closely resemble Gandalf. He is Gandalf. Our team has no doubts. In the unlikely event that he turns out not to be Gandalf and be another wizard, it would really be disappointing, as whichever wizard he could be, he should not have been portrayed so much like Gandalf. As we know, Saruman and Radagast were not. They both had their own persona. We hope you enjoyed this video analysis, and if so, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking the video, and leaving your comments and suggestions. We appreciate your support. Until next time, Namarie.